Making his monthly appearance on the podcast, Coach Mark Cascio of SAVI Coaching. Coach, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me, man. Always enjoy this.
The basketball season is here. It's hard to believe. And for NBA and small college teams, regular season started this week. High schools are officially getting going over the next several weeks. And so today we're talking about season prep and thinking through organizing thoughts, making sure we hit everything that we need to before that first game, or just simply as we kind of move along our season, making sure that we get through everything. I know there's a lot of excitement this time of year, and it feels like sometimes that can result in coaches with a lot of ideas of what to do. And it can sometimes result in either important things being overlooked or a scenario where we're trying to do so much that the right things don't get the attention that they need. Coach, is this resonating with anything you've experienced, or knowing you, have you always been so organized and prepared that this has never happened to you?
It definitely has happened to me. I do pride myself on being organized and prepared. I think it just comes from my background of being a really young head coach and not knowing what I was doing. So I had to get really organized to give myself a chance. But, a lot of coaches, no matter how long you've been in it, if you're not the coach, and I don't think you should be this coach that just copy and paste your practice plans every single year, because you should be, fine tuning your systems, maybe even changing systems at some point as the game changes. You should always be looking for a better way to do things. And there is no one right way to do things. So even though, we're going to share some organizational tips just to help you avoid misses or blind spots as a coach, but there is no one way to do it. But a common question I get is, how do we install the offense? How do we install the defense? Or another one is, what should I be focused on right now? Sometimes that's more off-season stuff. A lot of coaches will reach out and say, hey, it's April. I'm a head coach. What should I be doing? So getting organized just gives you a chance to operate at a higher level, and it ensures that the lowest level that you operate is somewhat above theoretically your opponents, right? We want to just operate a little bit higher level, raise the floor, and give ourselves a chance for a higher ceiling.
I think one of the things that we've done, maybe inadvertently slightly, but if people go back and listen to this show with you, so about once every month, 4 or 5 episodes, we've actually, through the offensive principles of play, defensive principle of play, kind of probably set the table of how a coach should think about things. Like, what are the things that are foundational to the systems of play that I have out on the court? Those are the things that I have to install. But you said something during it that I want to answer first in regards to what should I use my time on. Makes me think, what shouldn't I use my time on? Or maybe better put, what maybe are some things that coaches do spend their time on early on that maybe it's not that they shouldn't spend any time on it, but maybe can sometimes spend too much time on?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is installing sets, calls, or baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds. And again, there is no right or wrong way to do this. I'm not, coaches, if you're listening, please don't take this the wrong way. But there's a coach, there'll be a coach that'll reach out in August asking me, should we install this set? And if you're prepping for your season, awesome. You're getting way ahead of the game. But if you're thinking about installing things in August, September, October, that's not part of your core offense, I think you're doing an injustice. Think about the things that take a long time to develop. If you're going to play in a conceptual offense, or we're building decision making in our players, those are things that take a really, really long time. So we got to water that grass every single day. And every minute that you spend on something that's more dictating behavior, traditional or running sets, you're just getting away from those things. Sometimes I talk with a coach that wants to play with transition, like good pace and transition, and he'll say, "Gosh, like we're not playing at the pace we want to." I'm like, "Well, what are we doing in transition?" We haven't touched on it in a couple of weeks. I'm like, "What are you doing? Like what is possibly getting in the way of one of your biggest principles of play?" So just staying focused. I think it's really easy for coaches to be distracted. And here's the thing with distractions. We always think of that as being really negative, like, distractions are so bad. Sometimes we're distracted by really good stuff. Coach Tony Miller will go on Twitter and share an awesome drill or a play, and you're like, oh, I need to do that. And now we're focused on integrating this into our system or into our practice, when we should just be keeping the main thing. And then if and when that's more applicable, let's spend time on that.
Yeah, that's a big problem with social, is that people don't ask me, when did you use this? Or how did you use this? They just see the what and want to install it right away. And people that hate the no dribble tag. Well, I'm not practicing that for 50 minutes. We're doing this literally for 30 seconds at the beginning of a practice where my guys are really tired and just need something else fun to do. So yeah, the context is really important. I also think that you're right about the sets and everything. People almost get a FOMO of, but if I don't have this in, I won't have a solution for. Just simply having enough solutions for what you need early on. Is there anything that you have changed over time in regards to this preparation in the preseason that either streamlined things for you or allowed your team to focus better?
I love this question because it's a way that I have grown a lot. And looking back, I wish I'd have made this change sooner. Reads first, technique second. I think early in practice, we're so focused on our players have to do everything right, and they have to know every single detail, almost build that robotic behavior. And then we earn the right to play live or to play 5-on-5. Early on, I didn't embrace messy enough where I'm like, like we did that drill or played that game and it was ugly. So let's not do that again. If it's ugly, it probably means you need to do it more and more and more because that means it's an area of growth for your team. So for instance, reads first, technique second. Practical example. What I always start with, and we're going to do early on in the season and throughout the entire season, is working on our advantage game, which we call dominoes. A big part of that would be your closeout reads. Do we shoot it or drive it when defense is closing out? Well, we got to build that perception, right? Ball is in the air coming to me. I also see a defender. Do I have room, range, and rhythm? Yes, I'm going to shoot it. No, then I'm going to drive it. Before I taught how we attack a closeout, but a go step, a split step, a stampede, whatever you call it, or playing off the jab, whatever you like. Before I even taught that, I would just put a player in a closeout situation, give them rep after rep after rep, and just let them get a feel for, okay, this is a good shot or this isn't a good shot. I should drive this one. Then see what comes up. Maybe this player just has really good footwork or has a natural tendency to attack a closeout efficiently. Awesome. We don't even have to teach that now. But if players show a pattern of we're traveling, or instead of reading, catching, then doing, we're catching, reading, then doing, which is going to be slower, then we can give them some technique that'll help improve that. So I would encourage coaches, read first, games-based, constraint-led approach first, and then technique is just going to shorten your path to improvement. To me, technique is like the cherry on top that's going to refine it, where most coaches make technique the forefront, and it takes a really long time. I find the more time you spend technique early in the season, you get to your first game and you're like, wow, we don't play hard enough. We don't have enough in right now. And then you're playing catch up for the next few weeks.
I fully agree. However, I'm going to ask you this. What do you say to the coach who is fearful about them creating bad habits by repping improper technique?
That's a good question too. It doesn't mean that we are embracing bad habits. It means that we're just starting from a place of teaching the most difficult part of it first. So if we're going to apply a skill, let's say it's, let's just stick with the closeout, right? I've got to be able to, am I open? No. So I'm going to drive it. That is harder for players to grasp onto than a split step catch. You can teach a split step catch in a couple of workouts. And here's a practical way to apply it. We call it a skinny because we're going to do a technique or more of a drill in a short amount of time in a small space. So if I was working with a team, and Tyler and I travel the country and we do this all the time, we install this stuff with teams, I would start it exactly the way we said it. Let's create closeouts and let's just see what we got. Okay, this team has not been exposed to a split step catch. I call it a go step because we're going to go before the ball hits our hands, kind of like as that ball is hitting our hands, we're into our drive. They haven't been exposed to it. They don't know what it is. Let's stop. Let's do a skinny. Let's teach it. Give everybody 90 seconds to get as many reps in as they can with a partner. And then let's go back to that game and apply it. So we're actually going to build really good habits, but we're just going to start from the hardest place first instead of start from technique, which is the easier part, and then try to get to the reads if time.
To be at their best, your team needs you. In basketball, any moment can be a coachable moment. Elevate your team's basketball IQ this season with GameChanger Film Room, one of many free coaches tools. For games filmed on iOS devices, Film Room automatically skips downtime from game film like halftime and timeouts, so you can save time and focus on active play. On any device, you can review gameplay and mark those teachable moments. Share these clips with your team and add in your notes. Provide helpful feedback that you can even reference at practice. Film Room lets you focus on the moments that matter and keep your team improving all season long. Turn practice plans into game plans. Take your team to the next level with Film Room from GameChanger Basketball.
I ask this question every single year just to see what I get. The question is, if you're on your first week of practice, are you focusing on more offense, more defense, or is it 50-50? Every year that I ask it, I end up with the highest number is more defense. But the other numbers have changed considerably over the years. And I would ask you, which do you focus on more?
I'm definitely in the 50. Well, actually, more offense, but when I just first looked at those poll results, I'm thinking 50-50, meaning we're working on both at the same time. So I would say I focus more on teaching basketball and our general style of play through our principles of play rather than offense or defense. However, just if I had to pick between offense, defense, or what we do more at practice, kind of lean more that way, it's definitely offense because there's way more gray area in offense. We talked about the decision-making stuff being really hard in the game. We want to make defense as clear-cut as possible. We have some general rules that we would operate through, and I feel like defense is always ahead of offense, right? Like every spring football practice, every head coach is talking to the media saying, well, our defense is ahead of the offense. It's just easier because it's more binary. So way more time on offense. In fact, we might only spend, this is going to sound terrible, but it's true. We might only spend like 5 to 10 minutes solely on defense or with a defensive focus at practice, but we're coaching defense the entire time because if you're playing live, which we want to do as much as possible, unless we're working technique through a drill, you're always coaching those things. You could have one coach watching offense, one coach watching defense. You as the head coach watch both, or vice versa. For this game, Tony, you're going to watch offense. I'm going to watch defense. And then for the next game, maybe we flip because we're going to watch it through a different lens. But I'm actually pretty shocked at these results that it's 50-50 is kind of second place there. I think the old school approach is like, we don't even need the balls for the first week of practice because we're going to do so much defense. I will say this. One thing that I would recommend is getting as much teaching as you can in before you start practice. I know colleges, you have, your 4 hours a week or your 8 hours a week, usually 4 in the gym. If you're in that boat, get all your teaching in if you can. That way you can jump into more competitive stuff when you start practice. But either way, I would just really encourage coaches to lean on two-way teaching. And our last few episodes that we've done together have been on principles of play. Here's first principle teaching for shot selection. We hunt 9s first, big advantage layups, 7 second, which is big advantage threes. Well, if we're playing with that intent, defensively, we're taking away 9s first, 7 second. So offense, we're trying to get 9s and 7s. Defense, we're trying to take away 9s or 7s. If you're playing live, it's really difficult not to teach both of those at the same time.
How quickly do you get to the 5-on-5 and how much are you doing?
Yeah, I like this one because I used to be a coach that would put 5-on-5 way at the end of practice, and we would get there if time. And we might even do that for the first week because we quote unquote weren't ready for that. You get to it practice 1, and I like to do 5-on-5 as early in practice as you can and sprinkle it throughout instead of having a long 5-on-5 segment at the end. Let's get 5 to 10 minute chunks throughout the practice. Here's my advice for early season 5-on-5. Just create a success criteria or a primary focus. You're not going to have all your stuff in. That's okay. When you're conceptual, it's okay. If you run a very rigid traditional offense, I understand how that might be more challenging. But the way I'd approach it would be first principle teaching. We fill corners and action spots first. Those are our priorities, whether we're in 4 out or 5 out. Those are like the big magnets on the floor. So we're always going to flow to those spots because that's going to give us our alignment and our shape. So let's play 5-on-5 and let's just look at it through that lens. Are we getting the corners and action spots? if our guys are missing opportunities to screen, or our ball screens look really, really poor, or our shot selections not where it wants to be, we're turning over, whatever that is, got to put some blinders on. And if your success criteria is that we're spacing the floor in corners and action spots, just evaluate and give feedback on that. And you can always just continue to refine and add as they get more and more comfortable.
Often people think of the constraints led approach just simply being, or primarily being, for small sided games. We'll use that in 5-on-5 with the things that you just mentioned. I encourage coaches to do that. So your 5-on-5 turns into more than just playing or repping your offensive and defensive principles of play. But we have a 5-on-5 full court game dedicated to just shot selection. And then we have one that's dedicated to a couple things, but one, turnovers, and then also the start of games. So we'll play the first 4 minutes of a game. So I split the two teams up, have them pick 2 to 3 set plays that they want to. We script the first 2 to 3 plays of every game. They'll script them on their own. They come out, they execute. Obviously, not everything comes from a set play, so then they play as well. But then we also tie that to turnovers and how many turnovers that you have in that first 4 minutes. So I think using the 5-on-5 and more than just playing, like you said, where a lot of coaches use it as a reward at the end, but also incorporating special situations. We've done special situations. We do it from literally the first day of practice. We'll start practicing special situations. So just another way to kind of mix in the 5-on-5.
Yeah, I love that you start special situations early, because that is one of those things. We started this episode talking about things that coaches maybe spend too much time on early in practice. One thing we don't spend enough time on is special situations. Here's an easy one I always share with coaches. Whatever your foul call is, where you need to give a foul or intentionally foul, for us, it was code red. Just in your one-on-one games, if you're doing some kind of ball handling where you have offense, defense, a lot of people do the old zigzag drill. I don't recommend doing a zigzag. I would just say play full court live. And then we would just tell our team, when we say code red, that means foul. Everybody foul at half court, right? So we're going to play one-on-one live, full court. Everybody give your code red at half court. Then we'll check it up and play live from there. And then in that same practice, when you're playing 5-on-5, before the end of practice, like we just talked about, just yell code red at random points and just see if it sticks. Another thing that I would use that for, a skinny example, would be we do the code red at half in the one-on-one full court, and we're intentionally fouling. Our technique is bad, right? We're not fouling hard enough. We're fouling too hard. Stop and do a skinny. Everybody split up with your partner for 60 seconds. Just practice fouling each other. Here's what it should look like. Demonstrate it. Then your coaching staff walks around, gives instruction, cleans it up. Okay, let's go back to that one-on-one full court game. We call that a game sandwich. Start with a game, sandwich in the drills for technique, and then go back to a game.
My fear is that they are listening to this and they are even more nervous that they're not getting everything in. If you could, first week, what would you suggest? And just time allotment without giving me a minute by minute breakdown.
We always start early in the season working dominoes. So just advantage game. We want to work on our players' ability to shoot it, drive it, or move it. And I mentioned reads first, technique second. I'll just spend a little time on this. The read of when to shoot it or drive it. The read when we're driving it, do I finish or do I pass it? And then if I get a pass, it all starts over, right? Do I shoot this? Do I click it for a one more? Do I drive this closeout? That gives you a systematic approach to your skill development. So if I pass you, Tony, the ball's in the air, you're thinking shot. So we got to work shooting. If you don't shoot, you're going to drive it. So we got to work driving and finishing. If you don't finish, you're either going to pass or stop. So now we've got to work passing and stopping. And that just gives you a nice little flow of what skills you need to do, rather than thinking of skill development as 2-ball dribble or Mike-ins or something. Like, let's just do it within the context of our advantage game. So we're always working dominoes. I like starting with transition as well. That is the beginning of your possession when you gain possession of the ball. So can we take advantage? Can we create advantage in space in the full court? Can we take advantage of advantage, meaning finish when we have advantage? And if we don't, can we flow into the half court? So the flowing into the half court would be, what actions do we typically start with? That could be a drag screen. That could be wide action. For us, a lot of times it's Rose series. So then we're going to start teaching that. And once we add defense, now we start teaching defensive principles. I would start from first principle teaching. If you're a lock left team and we're playing one-on-one, I would just say, hey, we're going to play one-on-one offense. You're focused on getting a 9, right? You're trying to get a 9. If you don't get a 9, you need to stop. So we're working reads at the rim, we're working finishing, all that good stuff. And I would tell the defense, every right hand finish is worth double. So then automatically, again, I'm not giving them a bunch of technique, but automatically they're going to position themselves to take away the offensive player's right hand. So we're starting to build lock left in without a dissertation, without a whole lot of technique. And let's say I'm guarding you, and we all know how good of a driver you are. So you take me to the rack because I'm way too open. Okay, well, now maybe I stop and teach, hey, look, you're a little bit open here. So I like that you're not giving that player a right-handed drive, but you're giving him a straight line drive to his left hand. We actually want to funnel the ball to jail, which is the corner of the court. How would your feet look if we were funneling it to jail? They adjust their position and you say, okay, perfect. Let's try your next rep. Let's do that. Or even better, let's make that next rep immediate to where we shorten the feedback to application loop.
One of the things that you have done is kind of put together some checklists for coaches to be able to organize their thoughts. I'm going to pull that here if you're listening to the episode. I'm going to put that here on the screen. And Coach, you go ahead and talk through that and maybe give them some suggestions and then also where they can find this.
Yeah, we called this the season dashboard. I used it when I was a head coach, when I was at high school level. And then at the college level, we used it to just organize a lot of our stuff. As coaches, we're always creating documents, we're stealing documents, and we have all this stuff, and sometimes it's hard to find. So this was just a way to organize our entire program. So some of the categories for those listening and not viewing is culture, operations, our actual style of play, basketball stuff, how we manage our team or roster, our staff, and then I have categories down here as far as recruiting, practice, game day, other resources, and then your miscellaneous stuff. So most of these are linked to documents. For instance, this is a scouting report template that we would use. So this is what we use for an advanced scout. This is what we would actually fill out for a scouting report. If you're big in the scouts, I've got some thoughts on that. Maybe that's another episode. And then our post-game report. So they can all live here in one spot. We know where those are. As far as laying out our season, we have an operations sheet that is going to give you just a bird's eye view of your season. And then we can fine tune these into other checklists. And this is also a great way to delegate to your staff. I said I'd get asked the question of what should I be doing this month. This was kind of my way of not letting anything fall through the cracks. As a head coach, you have so much on your plate that sometimes it's hard to think about X's and O's. So this example here is just a monthly checklist. This is all the tasks that I had to do in August, from reserving the bus for travel to eligibility paperwork to reviewing our standards from last year. And then any meetings that we needed, I would write in here, and then all the resources. So maybe these are resources from the previous year that I could use as a resource for this year, or just easy links that I could get to. So for instance, a link in here is like the physical form if you're a high school coach and in charge of that, or your conditioning program, just one click and you can find that. So there's tons of resources in here. One that might be helpful, I know we talked a lot of like systematic stuff, X's and O's. I just have a checklist that covers everything under the sun that you might have to do on both sides of the ball. And this is just a good prompt for you to make sure that you're addressing everything. What does our transition look like? Do we have our who's going to inbound for us? Are we going to run a numbered break, press offense? Do we have that in? Is that going to be more principle based? Is that going to be structured, all the way down to all of your special situation stuff? So it's just kind of a fail safe for you and your program to make sure, one, you're organized, two, nothing is slipping through the cracks. But I think most importantly, like I said, is like we're going to raise the standard of how we operate as a coaching staff and a program. And I think this honestly is the difference between running a program and coaching a team year to year. You refine your systems. You have a system for everything. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you follow up here. But a lot of coaches want change. Think about last year, things that you learned. right? Maybe you wish you'd had a better culture. Maybe you wish you would have spent more time on special situations early in the year. Maybe you want to change the way you warm up for practice. You can't. It's great to identify those things, but you have to put an action plan in place. You have to have a system and a process for those things. This was my way to organize and make sure that we had it all put together. So it's a great resource. It's one that I couldn't imagine coaching a team without, to be honest.
Where can they find this, and then what is available to them?
Yeah, so this is for our paid members. We have a paid membership. It's $100 a month or $970 a year to be a member. This is just one of the resources that you get. But we do have an off-season identity checklist that'll help you just kind of start building this for yourself. I love being on the pod. A lot of coaches reach out after, and I really get excited when coaches do. So if you reach out to me at Mark at SAVI Coach or on Twitter at Coach Cascio, and then we have a free coaching community with over 1,700 coaches in there. Reach out to me there if you're already in. Shoot me a DM. If you do, maybe something that you're most interested in, like I'm interested in the yearly checklist or the style of play checklist, or give me something on recruiting. If you reach out to me, I'll make sure to make one of these resources free for you to help you have your best season yet.
Pays to listen to this podcast. Coach, always appreciate you giving your time and resources.
Thanks for having me, man. I think I get more out of these than you do.
Thanks.